Ethan from Zimmer Labs, and this video is on this Watto's Junkyard Dark Lord Proffiboard Neopixel lightsaber I just finished up. The main reason for building this guy is because the first one I built, Angry Joe bought a couple weeks ago, so I wanted to have another one all finished and ready because there was a lot of interest in this guy, and because this one is one of my absolute favorites, one I wanted to have in my collection at least for the meantime until somebody decides they want to buy it, in which case I'll have to build another one. But at any rate, this guy's going to be pretty similar to the first, but with some changes and some additions, just a few tweaks here and there to the overall master plan, some little things that I thought ought to have been in the first one that I hadn't thought of the first time around. So let's run through it. This is a Revenge of the Sith Darth Vader lightsaber, like I said, done by Watto's Junkyard and Saber Bay. They do a great job pretty much all the time. Their stuff is always really nicely put together with a really good finish, nicely machined. Everything you need in the kit comes in the kit plus extra pieces. You know, this is set up for a 1-inch or 7/8 inch. You've got two different front ends, two different blade plugs, and all the stuff you're going to need to build this however you want. And it's a really elegant hilt. Like, they did a beautiful job. To me, this kind of reminds me of like a disco lightsaber. The dimensions and the style, the design of it. You know, it's kind of 70s, maybe even 50s to an extent in its aesthetic, but it's a beautiful lightsaber. Lots of really heavy duty chunks, and I mean, if you look at the reflection on that, the mirror finish on everything is just gorgeous. It's got an absolutely, you know, luscious piano black, and the chrome, of course, is great. The rubber grips are sumptuous. You know, this is kind of like having one of those black lacquer mirror and black marble dresser sets that you know people had in the 80s. I'm not going to say who, but you know what I'm talking about. So that's what this guy is. It's kind of a luxury creature comfort type of lightsaber. Let's start by how it works. Unscrew and remove the pommel. That exposes the chassis. This is where it stops usually, but I went the extra step to make the chassis removable. That is accomplished simply by removing the switch assembly. The switch assembly, obviously, I customized a bit and turned it to a key of sorts. The whole assembly slides out. There's a pin connector in there. The switches are in there. And it slides back in. And these guys mate with the female end of the header pins, which are right here. So this is what's happening when it's actually installed in the hilt. But this keeps it locked in place. Down at the bottom you have your recharge port and main power switch. Fire it up. We've got a 28mm Saber Essential speaker on here. I had one. It's not a speaker that I usually use, but I had one, so I wanted to try it. I don't see any huge upgrade or, you know, bump in sound quality, but it's certainly just as good in sound reproduction as a Vico or the JBLs I usually use, or the Wow Sound speaker. They're all pretty similar in my opinion as far as sound quality. It sounds really good, you know. It does what you expect it will do. There's a number of detail elements that you guys can probably see here. Some geometric mesh going on down here. Also in the windows. Also behind these windows or vents, whatever you want to call them, with also some diffusing material going on back there. And as you can see, obviously Neopixel accents going on. This is a cover. Just pop it off to get access to the soundboard. There's a strip of Neopixels here. Simply peel up and back to access your USB or SD card. Lie them flat back down and recap the electronics when you're finished. That way everything is nice and clean and not exposed. On the flip side, you have crystal chamber. Might as well fire this guy up so you can see it real quick. It's about a 2.5 inch long double pointed quartz spear in there. Illuminated with dual RGBW Neopixels. These are also RGBW. Brass rods running through the whole thing on both sides to firm and strengthen the whole thing up. And up top we've got a fully encased 21700 5000 milliamp hour battery, 10 amp Samsung battery. The brass heatsink used as a blade connector holder with a homemade diffused frosted plexiglass pixel baffle, I guess you could call it. Dimitri Stock's brand new version 2 Neopixel pogo pin connector, which is bright, super duper bright. And then one of the next major changes I made on this guy versus the first V1 version of it is the header pins here that connect up to the switches. Originally, if you wanted to play with or, activate the electronics at all, when the chassis was out of the hilt, you had to put the switch assembly on. But that, it's delicate, you don't want to do that, so I added, for this build, secondary buttons, which you can see here and here. These are small 7.5 millimeter momentary tactile switches, plunger style. Auxiliary button here, main power here, and that just makes life easier, so you don't have to worry about plugging in the switch assembly or using tweezers or something to jumper the connectors. You can just use these secondary switches, and that makes life, like I said, a lot easier. When you activate it, you see this white Cylon effect going here. It goes into a blade effect and mimics whatever the blade's doing, color-wise and effect-wise. In addition to a few other the fire blades, obviously, is a fire effect going on here, as well as on the flip side in the crystal chamber. And then, as you see, this guy's a bit different. Just got a pulsating dark red that is a color cycle setup. So this guy goes, instead of a Cylon, it's just a color cycle version of the same, and then a color cycle blade ramp. Because I really liked both setups, both effects, I wasn't sure which one to go with, so I figured I'd do both. So that's essentially it for this guy. As I said, recharge down here, main power switch here. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I would show you guys the new version 2 Neopixel blade connector, but it's underneath this frosted diffuser piece, and I don't really want to deal with taking that off right now, but it pops off. And the main difference is the pixels are the newer WS2813s, which are supposedly a tiny bit brighter, 5 to 10% brighter than the original Neopixels. I don't know personally if that's true or not, but certainly it seems to be real bright. So perhaps there is some truth to that. And then there is an additional feature here where one of these pins, one of the ground pins, can also be segregated out and used as a blade detector pin, so that you can tell the Proffiboard, hey, there is or isn't a blade connected, in which case do this behavior or this behavior. So if there's no blade, you could do a malfunction sound, or if there is a blade, you could tell it, you know, you could have it set up so that you could stick a blade in to recharge the lightsaber if you had a just, you know, an adapter you built to go in the blade end. There's a lot of different things you can do with the blade ID button or pin. But yeah, so that's about it for here. Let me just pop it in, and we'll run through some of the blades real quick. This cover doesn't like to stay on that well. That's probably the only real design flaw with this chassis. I really like what Goth 3 Designs did on this. It's a beautiful chassis. Really elegant, all-inclusive, got room for everything you want to put in there, and plus from tip to tail it's packed with good-looking stuff. But this little cover piece is not the most strongly attached piece. It's got 4 clips that attach to the brass rods, and I don't know if it's because I got maybe a somewhat loose one from Shapeways, or if it's just the design is subject to that, but it doesn't really stay clipped on as well as I'd like it to. Up front, new homemade blade plug that I did. It's got really, really good shine through, and then it's got a super thick walled trans white polycarbonate blade shell, and just a small aluminum handmade greeble in the middle that's got kind of a spiraling pattern on it that kind of matches with the overall flavor of the lightsaber. But it's got a really good shine through. Overall, it looks really nice. Compared to the blade plug that comes with this, I like this better in that it's got shine through, because the blade plug that comes with this is a solid piece, so you don't see any light. And one thing about this guy is it's loud. And it's not loud because I turned it up loud. It's loud because of how the hilt and the chassis is designed and where the speaker is located. And I think maybe also because it's recessed, and just having that little area to kind of bounce the sound out of really maximizes the sound. This is only set on 2000 out of 3000, so that means it's 2/3 up. Maximum volume is too loud on this. I can't even deal with it. Pop out the blade plug real quick, and I'll put the blade in. Blade retention screw is this little tiny fellow right here. I use a T5 for moving that, but I think it's actually a 1.3 in metric, but I think T5 kind of grips and works better. So blade just simply slides in. It sits about 1.5 inches deep in there, not too deep, not too shallow. About 4 twists to get that set screw locked in.
useless to resist. Too easy. One is have control of fear.
Attention. The Empire's taking control of the city. I advise everyone to leave immediately.
And those are some force sounds. I try to sneak those into each blade preset. And as you guys can tell, all the fonts are smooth swing fonts, and they really sound great. I mean, the accuracy is absurd. That is about it. As you guys saw, there's a bunch of traditional blades on here with a white blast ignition effect, but the colors are red, dark orange, orange red, standard orange, yellow, chartreuse, and then a fire blade, a turbine blade that goes orange to red, and that actually might have been it. I think there was one or two other ones. There's an audio flicker blade in there that was red and peach. No, papaya whip, I think it was. Yeah, that's probably about it, though. But yeah, that's this guy in a nutshell. It's a beautiful hilt. Really, really well executed by Watto's and Saber Bay. It's got a really excellent, bright Neopixel blade. The Proffiboard version 2 is just... the smooth swing is out of this world at this point. I remember when smooth swing was a new thing, and I didn't even do it. I wouldn't even put it on my sabers because I thought it sounded so terrible. It was just not there. It's totally there now. It sounds so good. And the sound fonts are kick-ass on here. There's probably 10 to 12 different sound fonts, all smooth swing, all Vader. Lots of good force quotes and sound effects. And then one other thing I forgot, and I always forget, the audio player. Each blade has its own preset audio track, so all you have to do is do a long press on the power button before you turn the blade on. probably 10 to 12 tracks on this guy. All the classics, and then everything that I could find that was semi-Imperial related. So that's about it. Thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned. Next up, I have a Titan class budget build Graflex that I'm going to do a video on. That's for Eli. So stay tuned. I will have that coming up very shortly.